Good afternoon, and thank you for attending today's webinar regarding changes to Tempe's transit services. My name is Laura Kaifas, and I'm with the Tempe Neighborhood Services Office. I will be helping out with hosting today's meeting. With us today are Sam Stevenson, Transportation Planner for the City of Tempe, Eric Iverson, our Manager, Tiana Yee with Public Information, and Brenda Clark with our office will be helping out in case anyone needs translation services. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the website probably in about 24 hours, maybe a little bit more. Before we get started, some information on how to participate. After the presentation, we will have a question and answer period. You can either type your question in the chat or the Q&A section, and we'll read them for the team to answer. Or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you so you can ask the question yourself. If your question is related to a specific slide, you may want to jot down the slide number to facilitate the discussion. So to raise your hand, find your name on the participant list and hover over it. The hand icon will appear, click on it. This will put the icon by your name. You can click it off once your question has been answered. If you're on a cell phone, please click the chat bubble. If there are a number of raised hands, I will try and call on the participants in the order received. Also, please note that the comments from today's meeting will not be logged as official comments. To make an official comment, please go to tempe.gov/forum and take our survey. The comment period for this particular topic will be open until March 21st. Okay, I think that covers it. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Laura. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sam Stevenson, the Senior Transportation Planner for the City of Tempe. And this afternoon, I'll be presenting an update on our process for transit service reductions and the balancing of our transit fund. I do want to take a moment to thank Laura Kaifas, Tiana Yee, and Sam Sturck, who have all been instrumental making sure we're doing our best to develop our materials and get the word out to the public. And I also want to take a moment to thank Valley Metro, who've helped us throughout the process, and we'll continue to coordinate with them as we propose and strategize for any potential service reductions that may be to come. So here are the two performance measures attached to this project, the 20-minute city and also the transit system satisfaction survey. And then here's our agenda and the specific items that I'll be covering this afternoon. So some information on our fund balancing efforts and our local economy here in Tempe, the details surrounding our next round of transit service changes that we're proposing today for feedback, and if approved, these would become effective in October, so later in the fall. I also have some information about our outreach efforts, as well as Tempe's transit system in the context of the regional transit network. And I also just want to mention before I dive in that we presented to council last month, and they did support our approach and process to presenting these proposals to the public for comment. So I just want to mention that. And then here's a snapshot of exactly what our multimodal transit program encompasses today in Tempe. These elements are primarily funded through our dedicated transit sales tax. They include bus, rail, our bicycle and pedestrian programs, and also many of our streetscape projects. Here's some information about our transit fund. So you may have heard us mention before that based on some of our recent forecasts, we anticipate having to make a $9.5 million annual reduction in recurring expenditures. And this is in order for us to make sure that our fund continues to be sustainable in the long term so that we can continue to provide these transit services far out into the future for years to come. We do expect to have an updated forecast in the coming weeks. The updated forecast may or may not impact the $9.5 million target. I also want to mention that through the fund over the years, we've made some significant investments in our local transit system. And later in the presentation, I'll share with you how our local investment has great significance in our region. The result really has been that the transit program in Tempe is very successful, we feel. Our city demonstrates the highest transit utilization per capita in the entire region. In addition to some of the points that we've shared before regarding our financial position, I want to mention that we believe our financial position has been partly triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we want to remind everyone that reduced ridership, reduced fare box recovery, some abuse that we've seen of our reduced fare policy, and also our aging fare collection infrastructure are all among some of the trends that contribute to our current financial situation. We're working on many fronts in partnership with Valley Metro to try and reverse some of the trends that we're currently seeing. The region has procured a new fare collection system, and that project is well underway. So we do hope to see some improvement with our fare collection and fare box recovery ratio once that new project is in and operational. We continue to move forward with transit service reductions. We want to make sure that everyone's aware that we're using data and facts to develop these recommendations as we advance them through the public process. And really, I want to mention that our overarching goal here is to identify any potential service reductions that we can make while minimizing the impacts to the community. So essentially, we're reducing our expenditures and maximizing the efficiency of our transit system. And then long term, we want to explore any large scale potential opportunities to further reduce our costs of delivering the service to the public, recognizing our very significant local investment that Tempe makes in transit. So now I'm going to move into some of the specific service change proposals and the process that we follow to develop those proposals. So as I mentioned before, we'll be using the data we have on hand to inform some of these concepts. This slide here summarizes our community value survey, which we completed back in the fall, essentially asking the community to rank their priorities for transit service in Tempe. The categories on the left-hand side are areas that we'd like to leave alone for now, based on the feedback and the response that we heard from the community. So for example, maintaining the orbit as a free service and also the frequency across many of our routes. The categories towards the right-hand side were ranked lower by the community, and so we're honing in on these aspects of our system to see where we may be able to further reduce some of our expenditures. Additionally, we've been analyzing some of the more quantitative data for transit system performance, and so this slide shows how our routes in Tempe compare to all of the transit routes in the region. So we definitely have some that are among the highest performing in terms of ridership. Ours are highlighted in yellow in the bar chart. And then we use a cost per boarding as a metric to compare the efficiency between our different services. Again, the goal here is to really identify areas where service reductions will have a minimal impact on the community and our ridership. Just as a reminder to everyone, back in December, our council approved several changes that will become effective in April, so just in a couple months' time. The proposals I'm about to present, as we advance them through the process for feedback and comments, if approved, would become effective in October as our second wave of transit service reductions. So jumping in, our first proposal for October is to reduce the span of service on all local bus routes by 2 hours in the evening. We've explored this idea based on the outcome of our community value survey, and then when we reviewed our ridership data by hour and time of day, we find that the latest 2 hours of service are by far the lowest ridership hours that we offer today on local bus routes. The charts on the right-hand side of the screen show the percentage of boardings by hour in Tempe, with the final 2 hours highlighted in orange. So you can see that the final 2 hours of service, the top graph shows average weekday ridership, and the lower graph shows average Saturday ridership. Those are by far the two lowest ridership hours that we operate today. I want to emphasize that this is a very equitable change to the community. It impacts all areas of the city in the same way, as this map shows. So all of the purple lines on this map, all of the local bus routes on our major arterial streets would be included in this proposal to reduce the hours of service late at night. I also want to mention that this would bring Tempe into alignment with the level of service provided by many of our neighboring cities in the East Valley. So as it stands today, many of Tempe's local bus routes run later in the evening than our neighboring cities. The routes only run to our border and within Tempe. And so with this change, we'd be more so in alignment with the level of service provided by our neighboring cities. The next proposal that we're making is a reduction of weekday frequency for the Orbit Mercury route. This would essentially bring the Orbit Mercury into alignment with the other 4 Orbit routes that serve downtown Tempe. We consider 15-minute frequency to still be a very high level of service. It's definitely something that we'd strive to achieve on all of our other routes, hopefully someday. And essentially, the frequency had been improved to every 10 minutes years ago to address the ridership needs, but we're just not seeing that peak passenger loading condition today as we saw prior to the pandemic. Additionally, our new Orbit buses have also helped to increase passenger capacity on this route. And of course, we would continue to monitor this change, as with all of the other service changes that we're proposing, as ridership potentially returns in the future. The final proposal that we're bringing forward for potential implementation in October is taking a detailed look at the service provided in the area surrounding Guadalupe Road. When we take a look at our cost per boarding data, we see that Route 62, which serves Hardy Drive and all of Guadalupe Road in South Tempe, and the Orbit Saturn, which winds through the neighborhoods adjacent to Guadalupe Road, are both amongst our lowest efficiency or highest cost per boarding services that we provide. So we'd like to take a close look at all the services in these areas to see if there are any changes we can propose to continue to provide an adequate level of transit service in the area while addressing the high cost that the city currently expends to do so. So the first option, which we're calling option A, is pretty straightforward. It's the elimination of the Orbit Saturn route. You may recall the Saturn was implemented back in October of 2017. Since that time, we've seen the ridership steadily increase, but to nowhere near the level of utilization as the other 5 Orbit routes. So that, of course, creates a situation where the cost per boarding is very high. Even though this option eliminates the Saturn route, the area would continue to be served by local bus routes on all of the arterial streets in this area. The second option is made up of several parts. We're calling the second option option B, and it essentially has 4 components that all work together. The first component is shown here. It's the realignment of the Orbit Saturn to travel along Guadalupe Road in more of an east-west type pattern while still serving many of the activity centers and neighborhood areas nearby. In conjunction with the realignment of Orbit Saturn, we would propose the realignment of Route 62 to essentially remove local bus service from Guadalupe Road. Again, the Orbit Saturn route would be modified to traverse Guadalupe Road in more of an east-west type pattern, and Route 62 would be realigned and extended further south on Hardy Drive into South Tempe to terminate in the area near Priest and Warner. Additionally, we'd eliminate Route 65, as shown here. I want to emphasize that although this is a proposed route elimination, the entire Route 65 as we know it today would continue to be served by the modified Route 62, as I just showed, on the southern portion of where Route 65 travels today. And in addition, we would enhance Route 66, which also travels north and south on Mill Avenue and Kyrene Road, to add some frequency and enhance the service to make sure that we're still providing the necessary level of service on Mill Avenue and Kyrene Road if Route 65 were to be eliminated. So essentially, Route 66 runs every 30 to 60 minutes today. It would run at minimum every 30 minutes, with some trips running every 15 minutes during weekday peak between Elliott Road and downtown Tempe. And again, all 4 of these options as part of option B would work together. So the Orbit Saturn proposal, Route 62 realignment, Route 65 elimination, and Route 66 enhancement. These maps here show the existing and proposed scenarios when considering all 4 of these proposed changes. And the big takeaway here is that essentially the areas that are served by the 4 routes today would continue to be served by the 3 routes if this proposal for option B were to move forward. So essentially all of the same coverage zones would continue to be maintained. I want to emphasize it's really important that we hear from you all, and we want to gather feedback on each of these specific service change proposals. So we have a webpage set up. It's tempe.gov/transit changes. And our public comment period kicked off on Saturday and extends for approximately a month through March 21st. And so if you go to tempe.gov/transit changes, there's a link there to our online survey where you can let us know just exactly how each of these proposed service changes will impact you personally. And we want to know how these changes will potentially impact our ridership. There's also a section on the survey for you to suggest any other potential changes or give us some feedback on these proposals and let us know any other ideas that you may have related to this service reduction project. This next slide provides some perspective on how Tempe's local contribution to transit service through our dedicated sales tax aligns with other regional cities that fund public transit. This chart was recently developed by MAG, and it shows that Tempe is the second largest contributor to the regional transit system. The green bars indicate the local contributions of each jurisdiction. And the point here that we're trying to make is just how much local funding has been contributed by Tempe as part of the success of the region's transit network to date. So as we look ahead, we continue to progress through our process to balance our local transit fund. And as I mentioned, we're currently expecting to reduce our annual expenditures by about $9.5 million in order to ensure that our transit fund remains sustainable. I want to mention that we were awarded some assistance from the federal government through the CARES Act, and we recently found out we'll be receiving a second wave of funding, and this certainly helps us in the near term as we work through the pandemic. Again, we'll be working with the budget office as well as the CFO to get firmer numbers this month, as well as some baseline assumptions for the next fiscal year's budget. Again, the updated forecast may or may not adjust our $9.5 million target. We're here today to essentially advance these proposals through the public process. And then I want to mention that as we continue to move forward, we'll keep an eye on our budget and enact the approved service changes, and we plan to return to our commissions and council with any further reductions that may be necessary to make in the future. I also want to mention it's important for us to continue to work with the regional transit agency, Valley Metro, to monitor the costs and growth of our contracts for service with them. We do have some specific tasks we're currently working on related on finalizing transit service costs and for the Tempe streetcar as well. And then I'm going to go into the next steps here. So the council, our city council, supported these concepts and the process for advancing them through the public process last month. Our Transportation Commission also supported that approach. And we've presented to several of our boards and commissions over the past several weeks. Our public comment period extends through March 21st. This meeting today is the second of two public meetings that we had scheduled for this round of transit proposed changes. And then on April the 13th, we plan to return to our Transportation Commission with the findings from this process and for some input and potential support of any proposed changes that may move forward at that time. I also want to mention that Valley Metro, in parallel with us, conducts a public outreach process. So I'm sure that you'll see their outreach materials and information about a survey conducted by Valley Metro. I encourage everyone to participate and take that survey. Again, we partner very closely with Valley Metro and consolidate these comments to use the comments to inform the best decision that we can possibly make regarding these proposals. And then on May the 6th, we will return to the council for presenting them the results of this feedback and to request approval of any recommended changes at that time. And then again, if approved, any changes that are approved for implementation would become effective on October 25th of this year in the fall. And so with that, I would be more than happy to open this up for any questions that may come in.
Thanks, Sam. And I'm looking in the chat and in the Q&A for questions. If anyone has any they'd like to post, or if you'd like to raise your hand, please feel free to do that right now. Not seeing anything just yet. And as a reminder, please do remember to go to the forum and take our survey. It's posted in two places, both on our transit changes page, as well as tempe.gov/forum, in case you're looking for that. I will post it here in the chat. Questions, anybody? Sam, it looks like you were just full of answers today. Good job.
Thank you. Let's stick around for a few more minutes to see if any questions come in. I know it was a lot of information in this presentation. I just want to reiterate that you're all welcome to reach out to us with any questions. And all of this information, including a recording of this presentation and links to the survey, will become available on tempe.gov/transit changes. I'll go back to the slide here that has that information. And we'll also be posting the summary of our public feedback process on that webpage as well after all the data has been collected, probably towards the end of March is when we'll see that information posted.
Okay, we do have one popping up here. Can you give us an update on the express bus routes?
Yes, thank you, Molly. I see your question here. I'd be happy to. So we made several proposals for express bus route changes. They were proposed for April implementation. And we took those out to the public. And based on what we heard, the concepts as a whole are moving forward, but with some minor changes. So Route 520 has been approved for elimination, so that route will no longer operate. It's essentially being consolidated with Route 521. Route 521 will be modified to serve a single pickup and drop-off point in Tempe, and that pickup and drop-off point has been changed to the Tempe Public Library. So we have an area of the library parking lot that's going to be dedicated as a park and ride, and it's on the southeast corner of the library. And so Route 521 will pick up and drop off morning and afternoon just adjacent to the Tempe Public Library complex. Route 522 has also had some adjustments. All trips will begin and end at the Tempe Sports Complex and travel between the sports complex and downtown Tempe. So Route 522 has essentially been shortened and no longer travels in the neighborhoods or east of the sports complex along Warner Road. So I hope that answers the question. Those are the three changes that we have slated for April implementation. Those will become effective, I believe, April 26th of this year.
We do have a comment as well. The comment is, I think one of the reasons the late hours have low ridership is because none of the other cities are running connecting routes.
Yes, that is a great comment. Definitely, you know, one of the trends that we've seen in the past, regardless of whether the service is late night or earlier in the day, is that what we call our travel market is higher for our longer trips that extend beyond the borders of Tempe. So, you know, west into Phoenix, east into Mesa, so on and so forth. And so, yes, when those late night trips only turn around at our border, of course, it keeps Tempe connected internally, but those connections to our regional neighboring cities are no longer possible if the routes don't extend there. So, yeah, that's a great comment. You know, for years, Tempe has provided service very late at night to 1 a.m., as late as 1 a.m. And we just see, you know, as I mentioned, we see very low ridership during that time. But of course, we want to know exactly how the proposal may impact you, may impact our ridership in the public. So please let us know through our survey how you may be impacted by a potential reduction in service hours.
Any other questions? Well, seeing that we have no other questions, I think maybe we'll bring this to a close. Thanks so much, Sam, for your presentation, and all of you for attending to receive this information. Don't forget to take our survey.
Thank you.
Bye, all.